And we're live. What's
Skip,
up? What?
are we top 50 when it comes to the Raptors podcast? Are we top 50?
We're getting up there. Maybe around 50.
Well, at least we didn't hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
I saw that. I saw that. We saw that. Now, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you right now. Just know that you are locked in until the point with
Skip.
and the king. You guys know what to do. Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Go down there while you're changing your kids' diapers, whatever, driving to the grocery store. You guys can listen to us. Instagram, Facebook. What do they got to do?
Click the subscribe button down below. Comment on our videos. We love when you comment. Share our videos. Whatever you got to do.
Oh, you and I have been like way ahead of the curve. I see you drinking the tea. See,
Uh-huh.
that's what I mean. My man's like Kermit.
And now
Okay.
we're gonna spill the tea, right?
Yeah, don't spill the tea, bro. So, okay, Skip. Let's
Yep.
get into it. There's something really hot that happened. Can you read that quote that came out from
Uh,
Mom? Stop it.
well, I don't have the
Fred
exact quote.
VanVleet.
I don't have the exact quote word for word in front of me, but essentially, Fred VanVleet went on a podcast with a Mitman and CJ Miles and said he was being humble, but he thought that he was minimum a top 50 player in the NBA. So essentially, just saying that he was one of the top 10% players in the NBA, essentially, and with the NBA being the top 1% of, whatever it is, top percentile of players in the world, that he was kind of in that very elite group near the top. That was kind of his general gist of his point, was just that he
So,
was.
so, so my question to you, Skipper. By the way, it's just you and I. We have no guest today. Um, so we're in the top 50. So
Yeah.
let's get into this. Is Freddie Van Vliet can he be considered in the top 50 players in this league right now?
I think he's a marginal top 50 player. I think you can make a pretty strong argument that he's in the top 50. I don't think he's much above like that 40 to 50 range. I think top 100, he's pretty clearly in the top 100. He's clearly like a starter in the league. I think what I actually just for, shits and giggles, I pulled up a couple of different websites to see how they ranked everybody. And pretty consistently, Freddie was kind of in that. I think the highest ranking I saw was 39th. The lowest ranking was just off of the top 50. So I
I
think he's,
saw 47.
well, that's what I mean. Then there was one
Yeah.
at 47th, one at 40th, one at 43rd or something. So he was kind of pretty consistently in the 40s. So I think top 50 is a reasonable kind of expectation for what he might be. I think the other thing to think about is, right, you're talking about, as I mentioned just above, like the top percentile of the top players in the world. So when you're talking about, is he the 40th best player, is he the 60th best players, the gap there is very, very small. It could come down to an injury. It could come down to one little uptick in performance, one little downtick in performance. You look at Freddie's shooting, right? His shooting has not been good this year. Not, but I mean, it's been fine for a league standard, but as far as like a primary shooter, it hasn't been good enough. So you look at that, and maybe the list that were compiled before the season maybe had him at 39th, 40th. Maybe now he drops down a bit. Now he's overcome some of that with his playmaking skills. Especially he's also really gotten a lot better at finishing in the paint. Got a lot craftier around the rim. We've seen some beautiful little fadeaway jumpers in certain situations. He's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah, in the
added more
mid
to his bag, to kind of make up for the fact that he's down ticking in 3-point shooting. But obviously 3-point shooting was his primary skill, right? Or one of his primary skills going into the season. So if he's only a 34% 3-point shooter, that kind of drops him out of that range. Bottom line, I think he's a steady point guard. So I kind of looked at, I wasn't like top 50 players is tough. I kind of looked at the point guards in the league, right? If you do kind of a rough ranking of all the point guards in the league, You got maybe your tier one point guards who are your first division players, right? These are your
Okay,
all
let's go
stars.
here.
Yeah, so these are your all stars. These are your perennial starters on a championship team, like guys who can win titles. So you're talking about Steph, um, maybe Luca,
Trey,
Trey's borderline, but yeah, Trey. Let me just take a
Kyrie.
quick glance at my list here. You got Dame, you got James Harden, although maybe he's slipping a little bit. You got guys like Kyrie, you got guys like Halliburton and Fox kind of jumping up into that tier this year. So you got roughly about 10 guys in that tier one all-star. And obviously Freddie was an all-star last year, but he was kind of a borderline all-star. So I think that those tier one guys are the guys that would be your first division players, your guys who would carry you on a championship level roster. Then you got your tier two guys who are like really, really good point guards, but you're not necessarily going to be your featured player if you're a serious contender. Like a guy like a Drew Holiday, great player, but a great complementary player. You got even Chris Paul at this point in his career, maybe earlier in his career was tier one, but I think at this point in his career is more of a tier two guy. You got guys like Fred VanVleet. You got maybe Darius. I'd throw maybe Garland, Jamal Murray, LaMelo Ball into that tier. There's a few guys in that tier, but I would say the point is these guys are all totally capable of being starters in the league. They're really good players. They probably have an all-star game on their resume, because to be a starting point guard in this league, you kind of have to be pretty damn good. But they're still kind of like maybe those second division players, and I think Fred is kind of in that tier. And then you go down the list and you get your third division guys, the ones who are just some lottery team is throwing them out there because they got nobody better. He's not anywhere near that tier. He's a lot closer to a first division player than that. But I think he is kind of really comfortably in that middle tier, 11th to 20th in the league, which is a good place to be. But I mean, it doesn't kind of put you over the top, right?
You're saying 11 to 20th?
Yeah,
Player?
as a point guard, I would say,
but there's only so many teams. There's only
yeah.
30 something.
So I'm saying he's not really a top 10 point guard.
Low, bro.
He's a middle 10 point guard. That's basically what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Can I say something about that?
Yeah, go in. I kind of hit a lot of things there, so get out.
Yeah, you nailed a bunch of, I'll say it, a bunch of shit. You did say a lot of things. Now, and like when it comes to not Kyle Lowry. I know he's fitting that mold, but with Fred VanVleet, yes, mom, stop. Okay, his defense has been pretty good.
His defense is great. I didn't touch on his defense, but his defense is great. It's one of the better things about his game for sure.
He's third in the league when it comes to steals at 1.8. He's also, when it comes to assists as a point guard, he is 13th in the league with 7.2.
Yeah.
Right? So when you say at 11 to 20, yeah, that does speak about that. That actually really does speak about it, giving the ball up. But also he's expending a lot of his energy on defense. He's also been expending his energy on the offensive end. Like, we see him jacking up threes from the logo, like he's Dame with Steph, right? We see him trying to do that. We see him cutting to the rim, taking a lot of hits, right? Also finishing at the rim, right? With those crazy, like, he always has this layup, right?
Yeah. But the difference is he's finishing it this year. In the years past, he's run into big bodies and hasn't been able to finish. His 2-point percentages are actually way up a little bit this year.
So to my point about that is, like, he's been expending himself, like, I don't know, Sylvester Stallone, Dolph Lundgren, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's been pretty expendable, right? He's been putting his body through the work, and which is very hard, especially at his age. And trust me, I'm older than him. I do see like some light in him for what he's been doing with the Raptors, but I also think Skip, we're going off script here. It seems like he's been putting too much upon himself and betting on himself. But at the same time, it looks like it's a drawback for what he could potentially do to fit in within the system. And now, with that being said, my question to you now is, should the Raptors re-sign him, considering he is going to be a free agent at the end of the season, which is
Yeah.
very short, ladies and gentlemen. There's only a few games left. There's only one more game as of this recording against Boston, and one more against Milwaukee, then the play-in, and then whoever they're going to face, be it Boston or Milwaukee.
If they win the play-in, because remember they're looking at the 9 seed right now, so that's not guaranteed.
We covered that with Freddie. If they do make it, let's be positive here. There might be a few more games. Now, Skip, do you think that the Raptors need to? Here's a good question for you. Do you think they will keep him, Fred VanVleet, or maybe look to appoint somebody else with the ball to bring it up, such as a Malachi, Delano, a Dalton, a Scotty Barnes? Do you think the Raptors should keep them? And if so, if they do keep them, what would you give up?
Like contract wise? Well, okay. I think you pointed out a very good thing right there, just with your comments about these guys that you just listed. There's no replacement in waiting for Fred VanVleet. Malachi Flynn, I mean, maybe he's going to get one more chance, but he's not that guy. Jeff Dowden, useful player, replacement level player, he's not that guy. There's nobody internally on the roster who can replicate anything near what Fred VanVleet can do. There's nobody, like I talked about first division guards, second division guards, third division guards. If Fred's a borderline first division guard, those other guys are third division guards. You're going into next year trying to win, right? Because you gave up the 2024 first round pick for Pirtle. You don't want to tank next year and end up in the lottery because you threw a Malachi Flynn out there as your starting point guard. Sorry. So basically, I think the Raptors have to look into bringing Fred VanVleet back. I think the front office really does like him. I think he's really quite indispensable in what he does to this team because you don't have a lot of other guys who can initiate as well as he can, as well as shoot as well as he can. Now, you kind of went over a few of the options. So say they let him walk, right? They let him walk, they give Malachi the ball. Well, I don't think that's a recipe for success. The other option would be maybe you go out and because you've cleared a little bit of cap room, we haven't even gotten to the cap situation yet, but we know it's going to be really tough for them to re-sign all three of their free agents, VanVleet, Trent, and Pirtle.
VanVleet, Trent, and Pirtle.
Yeah, correct? It's going to be tough for them to fit all those guys in under the luxury tax. But say they let VanVleet walk and they sign the other two. Then you got to go out. If you're not going to give the keys to Malachi, the other option is maybe you go out and you swing a trade for a TJ McConnell type, even a Corey Joseph type, although Corey Joseph's pretty washed at this point in his career. But like one of those like kind of fringy guys, even like a Ricky Rubio, like somebody who's just hanging around the league who can kind of soak up those minutes and not hurt you too badly, kind of be your worst starter on the floor at any given time, someone like that. But that might be a little bit tough with the cap situation. There's probably ways to do it. If you move Chris Boucher and you don't re-sign VanVleet, you probably have a little more flexibility to bring in somebody like that. But I don't think that's a recipe to really win. That's a Band-Aid to not go completely into the lottery. Now I think
I agree with you on that one. That's like a patch on the arm.
Yeah, and then like the third option is maybe you can draft and develop a guy because you're gonna have a decent pick, a half decent pick this year. But I mean that's really risky to expect like an 18th overall pick or a 15th overall pick, whatever it ends up being, to come in and like be your starting point guard from day one. That's a tall order unless you're really able to, hit on somebody who's kind of that next level player. And then I think
Skip, you said this on our one of our last episodes about possibly the changing of the guard and with the point guard and the coaching, that somebody might come in and put it on Scotty
Yeah, so that was actually my last thing. So I was about to say my fourth option would be you can just fully go all in on this Scotty as a point guard experiment. So say they bring back Gary Trent, say they bring back Jakob Poeltl, and they let Fred VanVleet walk. Okay, so now Scotty is your nominal point guard, and that the positive to that is that allows you to put your best five players on the floor, right? Because you could have Scotty, Gary,
Scotty,
OG,
Gary, OG,
Pascal,
Pascal,
and
and
Poeltl.
Jakob.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you could have your best five on the floor if you did that in theory. And you could also kind of spur Scotty's development along a little bit, which could just kind of force feeding him this role as a point guard. Now, I personally don't think that Scotty is going to be long term this true point guard. I mean, he might be a ball handler. I definitely think that's going to be in his future, but I do think
You
he's going
think
to
he could
need.
be like a two, like a Mike or a Kobe?
No, I keep coming back to this Giannis comp, right? Like if he's more like Giannis, like Giannis still has guards to play off him, right? He doesn't he holds the ball a lot, but he does have other guys who are initiating around him. So I don't think long term that's the solution, but maybe short term that is a solution just to kind of fit the team together on the floor. Um, Now that's all that said, I think none of those options are perfect or optimal. I think the Scotty at point guard is the best one, but none of those are optimal solutions. Uh, but then you go and you say, okay, so what is Freddie worth on the market? So the rumor that was out there was that he turned down 4 years, 114 million. That's $28.5 million a year. Now he's making 21 something this year, I believe. So if you go up to 28, you're kind of getting into that right around where we said, right? 10th overall point guard in terms of like payment salary, sorry, not payment, in terms of salary, which is kind of commensurate with his skill set. But if he wants more than that, then you're stuck in this bind, right? Because it's like, yes, we like the player, yes, we need the player, but
What is he worth it?
but is he worth it? But also,
Hold
he's
on.
20.
We'll get into that into a second, Skip, about him being worth it. But you just said something there about uh about Freddie. Now that he's signed with Clutch Sports,
Uh-huh.
right? And you know those guys, they demand a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
right? They've really been trying to put their foot into people's mouths, into the owners' mouths, to take as much money as they can. Now, do you think if okay, Fred VanVleet's worth, do you think if he were to leave the Raptors, obviously under the influence of Clutch Sports,
Mhm.
obviously,
Well, bet on
and
yourself.
you know how much
That's his brand, right?
yeah, and you know how much I love LeBron and all that crap. Yeah, we all know that. Okay, but if he were to leave to maybe go collect a paycheck and get some greenbacks instead of Canadian money, where would you think he might possibly wind up in his eventual destination if it's not with the Raptors?
Okay, so well, this feeds into what I was just gonna say. So I think
Yeah, I know.
basically
That's why I cut you off. I
basically
owe you a
free agency is a game of chicken, right? It's always a game of chicken. It's always you're staring down the other guy, you have your offer on the table,
well,
and
hell yeah! Look at the MLB. Look at
yeah,
our
and they're
potential.
asking for more, and you're like, well, maybe we can go up, maybe we're bidding against ourselves, maybe we're bidding against somebody else. So I think the Raptors, that $114 million offer that was tabled previously, that he supposedly turned down, although it was, I don't know, it was maybe just a casual conversation, not an offer. It was,
I heard from the inside that he wanted more, but
yeah, I mean, the rumor now is 130 over four, right? But that was
yeah.
the 114 was what was reported, that was talked about. Now, I think the Raptors are still probably willing to put that offer on the table, even though he's had a bit of a down year, especially from the shooting perspective. There is that kind of worry on his end that like maybe he's in kind of this Dennis Schroeder situation where he had this huge offer on the table and now nobody will offer him money. Now, if he's determined to go out on the market
Like
and
Oladipo.
demand Oladipo, Dennis Schroeder. Now, if he's going to go out in the market and he's going to demand 30, 32 million over 4 years, whatever the exact number is, 35, kind of that upper level point guard thing, salary, you're kind of looking at okay, he's 28 years old. He has an injury history. He's probably peaked. I mean, you look at last year, probably last year will be his career year, the year that he was an all-star. I don't think he's going to be a multi-time all-star. I think he's found that was kind of the very top end. And then he had the injuries in the second half of that season, and obviously the shooting is way down this year. The
Don't worry,
overall
Mom.
numbers,
Skip's not shitting on Fred. Don't worry.
the overall numbers are still pretty close, but I think when you're talking about a player's that 26, 27, 28 range, especially a point guard who's under 6 feet, you're kind of looking at a guy. You look at Kemba Walker, you look at Isaiah Thomas, you look at a guy that's probably pretty quickly here headed for a decline. And
Okay, so where do you think he might go?
Well,
That's the question.
yeah. So there's, I think, 8 teams with cap space next year. Let me pull that up real quick. So the 8 teams I see with cap space are.
They don't look like successful teams because we got that Charlotte, we got Houston. Like,
Yeah.
we see things unless there's another team and he's willing to take a pay cut to join.
Well, the only teams that we need to take a pay cut for are where are they? Portland, Sacramento, or Dallas. But the teams that actually have cap space, and by cap space I mean $30 million available in a spot. Orlando is probably the one that jumps out because there's been those Orlando rumors floating around. You got the Jeff Weltman connection. Orlando is a team that's kind of on the cusp of kind of maybe turning that youth movement into something real now. We saw some signs of it this year.
They'll need veteran leadership.
Yeah, they'll need some guys in there to kind of push them from being a bad team into being a good team, right?
And I think Freddie can provide that veteran leadership.
I mean, Freddie, I think he's capable of being that kind of player. It's just a question of whether a team wants to invest in him because of all the reasons I just said, right? But I look at the free agent market next year, and there's probably only like maybe 4 or 5 free agents who are significantly better than Fred. Maybe 9 or 10, but you're getting into like younger players who have upside. Like in terms of like established players who are still on the right side of 30, Fred is kind of in that sweet spot because a lot of these guys are 32, 33, maybe washed up, maybe just have a guy like Kyrie, obviously the issues there. So I think a guy like Fred might kind of fall in that sweet spot in this particular free agent market where even though he's got a lot of red flags in terms of his age and decline phase, he's still younger than the other options. He still has more established than some of the other options. So I think there will probably be market for him out there. So anyway, Orlando's an interesting candidate. Now the Lakers are another one, but I mean, I don't really see that coming together because pretty sure they're going to spend that money on D'Angelo Russell or Kyrie. I don't imagine they'd be really shopping in the VanVleet market unless some stuff falls through, unless they have to kind of patch something together. But I'm not super excited about that for them. Then you got like kind of this tier of teams like San Antonio, Houston, and I'll throw Utah in there. Teams that are like and basically Chicago.
Yeah.
Why Chicago?
I got reasons, but go on.
Okay, well, San Antonio, Utah, and Houston are teams that are kind of actively trying to lose, actively trying to get younger. And I don't necessarily think they're in a position to go out and sign, even though Fred VanVleet's a bit on the younger side for this market. I don't think necessarily they're in the market to be going after a declining point guard when they're still maybe 2 or 3 years from being anything. That might be, I mean, they might go out and do something like that. It's not crazy, but it's probably not the first move that I would recommend for those teams. And then you have four teams that are kind of interesting that will have cap space.
Okay.
Now all four
really quick, Skip. We're short on time.
Yeah. So the 4 teams. Now these all 4 teams have superstar point guards.
Let's go yes or no. Let's go yes or no. OKC?
OKC?
No.
Charlotte?
Maybe.
Detroit?
Yeah. Wait, Casey connection.
Yeah. And Indiana.
Ooh. Let's keep it Canadian.
Yeah. So all 4 of those teams have superstar point guards, so they would have to kind of be looking at Fred in this combo guard backup utility role. So I don't necessarily see any of those teams jumping out of their seats, but they're just kind of, all four of those teams are kind of close enough to contention that maybe they'd make a move and maybe they could talk themselves into Fred. Anyway, so those are kind of the teams that are out there. I think Orlando's the one that jumps out at me the most. The other ones I don't really see, but anything could happen. I mean, he's young enough. Maybe someone will talk himself into sign him, flip him in a year, like that kind of thing. So,
Skip. Before we get out of here, just
yeah.
one real quick last thing, right? Since we're short on time, your arguments, they sound great for where he can possibly go and the possibility of him leaving, but at the same time, to everybody out there as Raptors fans, including yourself, it sounds kind of flimsy, and it kind of sounds like he shouldn't leave. Now, my question to you is he gonna stay? Is Masai gonna pay you the money? Is he gonna stay? Or does that depend on the status with Nick Nurse and him being systemic in the systemic when it comes to the on-court?
Well, if Nick Nurse goes to Houston, I think Houston would become a player to sign VanVleet. I don't. My inclination right now is that he stays. My inclination is that Masai's bet too much on this team right now to let him walk. I do think he has to have his walk away point if someone blows him out of the water, but I definitely think they have to put a competitive offer on the table. And yeah, my inclination is they'll work something out, but I'm not confident in that at all, especially with the cap situation. It could easily go the other way, but if I'm betting yes or no, my bet is stays. Yes, he stays.
I agree with you. I hope he does stay. This way I don't have to hear my mother give me shit all the time during every game. But honestly, no. But seriously, like when it comes to looking at it factually on the court, what he provides for the Toronto Raptors, like he might not be that outspoken leader like Kyle Lowry was, who he's taking the mantle from the championship season.
He seems to think he is. His little media
he
tour.
Thinks he is. He thinks he is. There's a lot of Gillette commercials that'll say otherwise. Okay, but he hasn't really taken on that. But I think he can get to that. And as a non-Raptors fan, okay, I'm just right now. As a non-Raptors fan, I'm letting you know. I honestly think that he's more beneficial to the team due to his experience and due to what he has provided and being part for Toronto Raptors. And I would like to see him stay, but if I were to put money on it, I think he might go where the money is because he's got to bet on himself.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked at all. But if you're asking me inclination, yeah.
I think he's already accomplished. Okay, I got a chip. Let me get some money and let me take care of my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids, right? Because that's what a lot of these players are. Skip, we got almost no time left, right? Before we send this out to Art. Art, I love you! Arturius! We did not hit rock bottom. Skip, one last thing to say, brother. Go.
What? You asking me if I have any parting shots? Well, I'll just quickly mention the Doughton thing. Like, it's it's interesting that they chose not to convert his contract for the playoffs. But I think that just speaks to the fact that all their backup point guards are kind of crap right now, and it doesn't matter which one they throw out there.
Okay. All I'll say, I'll end it off. I'll just say, you know what? Let's see what happens. Let's see what plays out. You guys can find us, more importantly, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, To The Point. Okay. Subscribe, please. We would enjoy that if you enjoy our content. So on behalf of myself, Skip, and the rest of To The Point family, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, and
Peace.